So we'll talk a little bit now about how stress gets under the skin, because you've probably all heard about some of the health impacts of stress. So there's a couple primary ways that stress gets under the skin, and the first is the fight or flight responses, and the other is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis like activation. So we'll walk through both of those. So your nervous system is, your autonomic nervous system is divided into parasympathetic and sympathetic. Your sympathetic nervous system is what gets revved up when you're ready to fight or flee a dangerous or stressful situation. So that worked pretty well for us in the time of lions, tigers, and bears, and when that's a threat. But now every time you're encountering like daily stress or hassles, your sympathetic nervous system is still getting revved up. And so some of the things that happen when you encounter threats, your pupils get dilated so they're able to see the threat more accurately. Your bronchi relax, your heartbeat accelerates, so you're just pumping more oxygen throughout your body into your large muscle groups. So as if you needed to escape a lion, tiger, or bear, your body's kind of revving up for that fight or flee reaction. Your stomach stops digesting, so everything just sits there. And if you're in the animal kingdom, everything just drops out so that you can fight or flee and focus on the attack. So your digestive system is definitely effective. Blood sugars get released, so they're also going to your large muscle groups to help with energy production. So whenever you're stressed, you see an increase in blood glucose. And then your bladder relaxes, so bladder control can change. So that's what happens when you're under stress or threat. There's also a hardwired system called the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's also known as the rest and digest system. I picture that as whereas if fight or flight, you're running from a lion, tiger, or bear, the parasympathetic system, you're laying in a hammock on the beach. So that's where your system kind of cools down. And you need both to have kind of a healthy balance, like stress response system. So your pupils contrast with the parasympathetic system, your digestion resumes, your heart rate returns to normal. And your body in general just enters into relaxed mode. So that's one way in which our bodies respond to stress. So it's called the SAMI response. The next is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And so the process here starts in our brain. So the hypothalamus is responsible for kind of sorting out what's stressful, what we need to respond to. It triggers corticotropin releasing hormone, which triggers the pituitary, that then causes the adrenal glands to release cortisol. Have you heard of cortisol before? Yeah, cortisol is a stress hormone. So in the first system that we were talking about, the SAMI system, that's where you release norepinephrine and epinephrine. And in this system, cortisol gets released, and then it triggers more norepinephrine and epinephrine if you need it. So both of these systems combined can rev up your immune system and cause this cascade of pro-inflammatory responses. So that's where you start to see a lot of inflammation in the body, which can affect wound healing. It can affect you getting more common colds. So that just means your immune system is really revved up and in an inflammatory state. And we also have anti-inflammatory processes that are kind of a feedback, and that eventually shuts down. But some people can be in a perpetual state of stress, where their body is kind of always revved up and ready to fight or flee, that creates a lot of wear and tear on the system. And what you see in that case is over time, usually middle adulthood or later, you start to see their bodies having less of a stress response, so there's not as much like cortisol. When it does elevate, it takes much longer to come down, so they're in this more persistent state of inflammation. And you start to see wear and tear on the body as a result. These are some of the diseases and illnesses exacerbated by stress. So definitely more frequent migraine and tension, headaches, temporomandibular joint dysfunction, where people just clench their jaws, like sometimes throughout the day, but then also at night, so that they wake up with really painful jaw. Heart disease, asthma. Some people tend to focus their stress more on the digestive system, so ulcers, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, and rheumatoid arthritis, because arthritis is an inflammatory process or disease. Cancer, we're still kind of out and thinking about stress causes cancer. We know that stress contributes to a lot of conditions that can affect cancer. I think there's an equal number of studies that support stress causing cancer and an equal number of studies that support like stress does not contribute to cancer. But it definitely contributes to inflammation and healing and some of these other processes. Other effects of stress that are equally important is stress is associated with the development of depression, post-traumatic stress, and pathologic aging. That just means early aging. So you're aging before your time. You might be 50 but feel 80. Affects fetal development and outcomes. So there's lots of interesting research that's coming out about stressed mothers and the impact on their infants. It predicts negative health behaviors and relapse, and this is one of the factors where there's kind of a link between stress and cancer. So when people are more stressed, they might tend towards increased smoking, alcohol abuse, illicit substance abuse, and definitely poor sleep habits, and those things in turn may affect cancer survival. It also reduces the ability to concentrate or focus, which contributes to memory problems. So a lot of people will come in to see me for cognitive screening and say that they're having some memory problems related to chemo brain. And chemo brain in general is real difficulties with things, your reaction times being slower and not being able to multitask can create some difficulties with short-term memory, but that's usually a result of concentration issues, because if you're not kind of processing information, if it's not going in, you're not going to be able to remember things as well. That also happens with stress and anxiety. If you just have so much going on out here that the information is not going in, that most of the time can produce what looks like chemo brain. I'd say probably maybe 6 times out of 10, rather than chemo brain, it's an issue of anxiety and stress contributing to memory issues for the person.